This is Good Shepherd Sunday, as we obviously just heard. And the Good Shepherd, I think, is a very powerful image of Christ. One thing I want to point out, more in passing, this is not a central point, but I think one thing that's worthy of note is that the image of Christ as bridegroom is not the only image of Christ in the Gospels. There's obviously this image of the Good Shepherd. There is the image of the vine and the branches, which I believe we will hear next week, the bread of life, etc., etc. And I think that's important because there are female shepherds, and one of the main arguments for not ordaining women is the bridegroom image, and I just think it's important to note that that's not the only image of Christ in the Bible. So thank you for bearing with me on that little side comment. One of our parishioners gave me a book by Philip Keller, who was a shepherd in East Africa, and the book is titled "A Shepherd Looks at the Good Shepherd." And this Philip Keller actually had a flock. He was actually a shepherd, and he had a ranch, and he had a flock of sheep, and they were his sheep that he owned. He was also in East Africa near the Maasai tribes, which were shepherding people, and he talked about how their relationship with their flocks, with their sheep. And he uses his experience to shed light on this image of the Good Shepherd. And one of his main observations is that the shepherd in these societies, in these kinds of societies, the shepherd has an intensely personal relationship with the sheep in his flock. He knows them. He knows their idiosyncrasies. He kind of knows when they're going to bolt off this way or bolt off that way. He knows which ones are nervous, which ones are calm, which ones are bucky. He knows them he or she knows them very, very personally. And has a very personal relationship. He also really cares about his sheep. They're not just product or merchandise. The shepherd has an affectionate relationship with each of his sheep. And the children in these families would have the various sheep and lambs when they're first born and have a relationship with them and play with them and pet them and cuddle them. And probably tease with them, and so maybe much as we would maybe with a pet dog. I won't mention cats because I don't know what you do with cats, but anyway, they did have a really affectionate relationship, and they really cared about their sheep, and he cared about them. But the shepherd also cares for his sheep. He gives his life for them, and so when we hear in the Gospels that Jesus gives his life for his sheep, it's not only in his death, but he just gives his whole life for his sheep. And the shepherd protects his sheep, but he just spends his whole life caring for his sheep. It's a full-time job. And the shepherd wants only what is good for his sheep, only what is good. He wants his sheep to prosper and have abundant life. So in the passage right before today's passage in John's Gospel, when Jesus says, "I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly," that's what the shepherd wants for his or her sheep. He wants to have them prosper and have abundant life. And the shepherd finds joy and personal satisfaction in the well-being of the sheep. When the sheep prosper, he prospers. And also, this is a passage we've heard so often, but it's really true that the sheep do recognize the voice of their shepherd, their unique voice, and they respond to that voice, and they follow him and they trust him. And they don't respond to other voices. And as Keller points out, how when other people would visit, and if they would call out to the sheep, they wouldn't respond. They would just stare, but they would respond to his voice because they recognized his voice, and they knew that he was their shepherd who was looking out for them and protecting them and leading them. And so the sheep really grow in trust. They really trust their shepherd. because they know that the shepherd only wants what's good for them. And they also feel secure when they're in the care of their shepherd. There's a security there. Then there's the beautiful image of the lost sheep. Remember, there's a lot of beautiful works of art, but I think it might be Luke's gospel where Jesus talks about the lost shepherd. In fact, it is Luke's gospel, where he talks about the lost sheep, rather, and how he goes out. Remember that it says that there was 100 sheep in the fold, but he goes out and seeks out the one who is lost, and you see those paintings where you see the good shepherd putting the sheep, the little lamb, over his shoulders, and takes the sheep back. And really, according to Keller, this really does accurately portray how the shepherd will go after the lost sheep, and maybe take some ewes with him, or her, and go and seek after those lost sheep. Keller also points out how it's in the best interest of the sheep to follow their shepherd, because they will thrive to the extent that they stay close to their shepherd, and to the extent that they listen to the shepherd's voice, to the extent that they follow their shepherd, then they will thrive. If a rebellious sheep or lamb tries to kind of sneak out of the fold, tries to escape, it doesn't go so well for them. They can end up getting lost. They can be attacked by predators. They can get caught in thickets, and they probably will end up dying or maybe starving to death. So it's really in the sheep's interest to stay close to their shepherd, and to respond and to follow their shepherd. So those are just some of the things that Keller points out about what actual shepherds of sheep in various places, how that relationship works. And I think the parallels for us are very, very clear. I think one of the clear points is that we thrive to the extent that we stay close to our good shepherd. We thrive to the extent that we listen to our shepherd's voice, and that we respond, and that we try to follow our shepherd. So our thriving really depends on our staying close to our good shepherd and responding to our good shepherd. Also, I think another parallel is that we too feel secure under the care of our good shepherd. And I think that's really important now, because this last year has been so difficult, and even these last weeks have been so difficult with the Chauvin trial, with the killing now of Daunte Wright, and with killings in other cities. There's been a lot of turmoil, a lot of anxiety. I think we all felt anxious when we were waiting for the verdict on Derek Chauvin. We all felt nervous on pins and needles about that. But we can know that when we're under the care of our good shepherd, there's a certain security there. And I think that's just a great feeling. I was trying to kind of get my mind wrapped around this, and I went for a walk today on the Greenway over in Minneapolis, and I just imagined Jesus as my good shepherd walking along with me. The Greenway it's the old railroad tracks, and it's kind of down a little bit in a trail, and it's got banks on either side. And I just felt myself walking through that with just conscious that Jesus, my good shepherd, is there, and it is a secure feeling. I know that when I've dealt with people in the dying process, I often give them Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, and people find that very, very consoling, just to know that our good shepherd is with us. And also a third parallel is that if we stray away from our good shepherd, we put ourselves in peril. Just like if the sheep stray away from the flock, they put themselves in peril. And so the same is true for us. We might get lazy. Some of us have maybe drifted away during COVID and kind of got sick of Zoom masses, and so it's easy for us to kind of drift away from the flock, from the good shepherd. But when we do that, there's a price to pay. It's not in our interest to do that. We put ourselves in peril, in spiritual peril. And then tomorrow at noon, Father RJ and I are gonna celebrate First Communion with our little second graders. And I think that one of the things that reminds me of is that the Eucharist is another way that Jesus shows his care for us, how he feeds us as our good shepherd. And I think just coming to Mass and receiving the Eucharist is another way that we can stay close to Christ. Because here we are. We are the flock of the Good Shepherd. I won't ask you all to go bah, but we are the sheep of the Good Shepherd, and the Good Shepherd offers us this meal, this Eucharist, this sacred meal. And so that's, I think, something to be aware of. Let's stay close to Christ. Let's stay close to our Good Shepherd. So let us give thanks to God that Jesus is our Good Shepherd. Let us stay close to him. Let us listen to his voice, and let us follow him. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.